to another episode of The Horror Academic. This time we're going to talk about a true classic that changed the face of horror for decades to come. And the surprising thing is it was a remake. That film? John Carpenter's The Thing. A lot of people forget that The Thing is based on the 1951 Howard Hawks film, The Thing from Another World. This traditional science fiction film made by a master director. It was extremely influential, but anybody who grew up born in the 70s or 80s or beyond, it's going to be hard to compare because we grew up in the age of the Carpenter thing. I mean, I could hearken it to The Day the Earth Stood Still. It's a very stark film, and it'll give you a very different feeling than the Carpenter film. So there's three things that make The Thing important, and it's the way that they use these elements. The first one is a baseline rule that you learn when you first start to understand film, is location, location, location. The idea that having the proper setting can tell so much of your story without you having to say anything from visuals only. And the fact that this is being filmed in British Columbia, it gives that true nature as opposed to trying to create this on a soundstage. There's no way they could have replicated what they wanted, and the fact that they were able to find a real place. Yeah, they enhanced it with some added features to the landscape, and when the snow wasn't exactly the way it wanted to look, they did add some fake snow on top to make the areas level, or even to make them the same as they were for the previous day's shooting. The fact they were at a real place, just much like in a Western, and how shooting in the desert, when you think of those like early 60s Technicolor cowboy films, and how they use the desert to show loneliness and emptiness in the lives of the characters. Carpenter uses the snowscape of Canada the same way. It doubles for Antarctica very well, and it gives you this concept that they are remote, and there's no way they're going to be able to get help because of how far they are from civilization. And it also is very good at giving you this otherworldly idea, which is excellent considering that the villain is an alien. So the second thing would be the ensemble cast. Much like Alien, the thing that works well in The Thing is human interaction. And you're dealing with a crew of men who are all stationed together, stuck in this place. Alien does it by taking the spaceship and taking the feel of the World War II submarine films and transferring that over into science fiction, where The Thing then takes that and kind of makes it even more secluded and a larger ensemble. So we have a group of men who are very tight and who, you get the idea, are sick and tired of each other, but at the same time are bonded and close friends. It's because of that close proximity. They're stuck in the middle of nowhere together. And one of the ways that Carpenter really effectively made this happen, and if not by choice, but by location, he did this by making them all live together, essentially. This wasn't a soundstage. We weren't in Hollywood. They couldn't go home at night. They all had to live together on a compound. And the fact that they not only were working together day after day in these close quarters, but then they would go and spend the evenings or flip-flop because of the hours they were shooting. If they had a day off, they were all still together. And that creates an extremely bonded cast. We see this in a lot of Romero's films. You think of Day of the Dead. The fact that they lived essentially by those mines in that entire period created this camaraderie and this familiarity with each other, and I think The Thing does the same thing. If you watch the special features, you'll see the behind-the-scenes footage from 1981 when they were filming, and you'll see that they were bussed back and forth between the set every day and where they were all staying in the hotels. So there's this very close connection that these guys get pretty quick because they're there together all the time. And it's not just the actors, it's also the crew. And that's reflected too. You see this kind of natural feel on this film. All of this feels lived in. And that's important because that makes it real. So we have location, we have ensemble cast. Now the third thing, in which probably is the most important thing for why the film itself is important in its place in history, is the fact that it has cutting edge special effects. This is 1982. There's a few films before it that obviously have kind of set the bar and moved it constantly higher on what special effects are for the modern age. I mean, obviously we have Dawn of the Dead. Savini's work in that film changed things, and he created techniques that became the standard. And then we also have like American Werewolf in London, where you see the amazing transformation sequences. The Thing has the most abstract concepts that had been really brought to life in special effects. And that's Rob Bottin and his team. It's amazing what they're able to do, because you have the alien creature is a shapeshifter. It can change its form. So you have to not only be able to have it duplicate, which is easy enough for an actor to pretend to be inhabited by the creature, or to, you know, show the dogs freaked out and say that the dogs are inhabited. But then to show it at these weird stages of transformation is just completely changes the game. And that, I think, more than anything, is what The Thing will be remembered for, is for how extreme they could take these special effects. And it's, I mean, they're really intense, but at the same time, once you see them, you can't think of anything else that The Thing could look like. And Bottin and his team are just amazing in what they can create. And it really changed the world. It changed what special effects were going to look like forever. I don't think we could have The Fly without The Thing first. And that's important. Another film that is an important version of a remake. But I think The Thing will always surpass because it's first. And altogether, I think these make it a really important film. It's an extremely rewatchable film. Every time I watch it, I find something new. Details, or just the amazing ability to see even more of the effects. It's just a classic. And I figured we're going to start talking about Carpenter because I couldn't do this without talking about Romero and Carpenter. So I wanted to start with the biggest film to me first. And I think The Thing sets him aside from everybody else. It shows, given the opportunity to have the big budget, or at least a bigger budget, from a major company, he has extreme backing at this point, and he does something extremely risky. He takes a beloved film, changes it, makes it more extreme, kind of walks that line between science fiction and horror, and it's his 1982. This is not the most sellable film you could make. In the end, it's considered a complete bust. Especially the fact that it's the year of E.T. So E.T. becomes the idea of what an alien is in theaters, and nobody's quite ready for The Thing right after it. It's too different, too drastic. They'd rather have the warm and cuddly. I grew up in that generation. I mean, I'll admit it. Steven Spielberg was far more appealing when I was a kid. I don't even know. I would have been 6 when that came out. I remember seeing it at a drive-in. I didn't see The Thing until I was probably like 16 and renting it from the local video store, and it still made a huge impact and changed. It opened the doors. It made everything different. Reading about the making of that film really can just give you so much insight into what they were doing, and it's really impressive still to this day. It stands up amazing. So from the collector's angle, I showed you my Laserdisc, my recently acquired autographs, but I mean, it's pretty bare bones. There's nothing to write home to about them, and this is just the only version that I knew of that existed on laser, so I picked it up for my collection. So it was a Universal picture. So Carpenter had this backing, this amazing backing, and because of it, he had the rights to do this film because of the original. Without the fact that Universal had greenlit his contract, would he have even been able to pursue making The Thing? And he says from the beginning, The Thing is his favorite movie. It is the one that he would want to remake if he ever got to remake. There's even references to it in Halloween. That's one of the films that you see Laurie Strode watching, well, the children that Laurie Strode's babysitting. That's one of the films that they're watching. The thing shows up all over the place in Carpenter's work. And the irony is that the reason why Halloween, why they're watching Night of the Living Dead and The Thing, is because those are videotapes that Carpenter owned in an age when people didn't have a lot of videotapes. So, it's kind of interesting. Fun fact. So, so aside from the Laserdisc, really collecting The Thing to me starts with the DVD, the collector's edition. This, it's an official Universal release. It has excellent extras at the time. So this was released in 1998. Pretty early in DVD. But it's still a collector's edition. Very good. Good bonus materials. You get commentary tracks, behind the scenes, all the good stuff. Highly recommend for DVD collectors. What is the perfect version is the Blu-ray from Scream Factory. This has hours of extras. This is amazing. First off, the print looks beautiful. It sounds great. And the special edition stuff, I mean, I learned so much about the making of this film, and I thought I knew a lot about the making of the film, and I learned so much more. Seeing the behind-the-scenes footage of literally them creating the location, scouting it, creating it, getting the cast and crew there, how remote that was, and then having so many of the people reflecting on it afterwards. To remember that this is Keith David's first film, so you have this, and then you have They Live. The two films together make him into a genre star. This, like I said, the ensemble cast is great. You have a lot of people who go on to different things, bigger things from here. But we forget that they start here. And you have people who you don't expect in a genre film. You have Wolfram Bramley. I mean, I grew up with him being in like family sitcoms and or family dramas and doing like oatmeal commercials, but he has a pretty important role in this film. Just seeing madness break out amongst the cast is great, how each one of them interprets it. So you have Mick Garris sitting down with John Carpenter in fairly recent times, I believe 2016, 2017, for the interview that takes place on here. What's even better about that is to not only watch that interview and have them reminisce, but to realize that Mick Garris shot the behind-the-scenes kind of reel that was used as promotional material in 1982. So you have him watch Carpenter make the film as a Universal employee, creating promotional footage, and then you have him now sitting down with Carpenter again and saying, you know, as someone who was there, let me talk to you about why the film still holds up, which is great. You have so much detail. There's great information here. Highly recommend. This is probably one of my top 5 picks in the Shout Factory, Scream Factory catalog. It's just really extremely well done and has so many extras. It's amazing. Each one of the Scream Factory's Carpenter collection pieces has great documentaries about the score, about the location, about the casting. These do not disappoint. These are great. Highly recommend. I think everyone needs to own this. Carpenter fan, horror fan, science fiction fan, everybody needs this in their collection. Another thing that I would recommend, I'm a big fan of scores and soundtrack. The original score for The Thing is great. This is not strictly a Carpenter score. We're really used to everything that Carpenter creates having a Carpenter score. This is a Morricone score. It was essentially, Morricone was hired to create a score based on footage and the screenplay, and it's haunting. It's vastly different from what Carpenter would have done on his own. You can learn that he does tweak it and kind of retool it to make it work more for the film, but it still has these haunting melodies you would not have heard otherwise. It's very different than a usual Carpenter score, and I appreciate that about it. Carpenter and Kurt Russell did 3 movies together in the 80s. They're all classic. Escape from New York, Big Trouble in Little China, and then The Thing. But I really feel that where they all are very much with his character in mind, his character in The Thing is probably, to me, the most expressive, the one who's given most depth. It's just a perfect pairing in many ways. Russell represents Carpenter in this kind of everyman way, and I think it's just the most effective pairing that the two had together. It's perfect. It really it's hard to think of any other actor in that role, and I think that's one of the things that also makes it classic. It's a wonderful performance. But as part of an ensemble cast, I mean, you need one character, I think, in this instance that the audience can mostly trust and rely on. It's not particularly a reliable narrator story, but we become closely tied to him, and as it plays out, you really wonder, would I be able to do that if it was me? It's one of those type of films where you hope that you would be as heroic a character. And he's shown clearly in the beginning as a bit of an anti-hero, but he still becomes the most honorable of the group in that way of being respected as, okay, we're alright with you being the one making this assessment. And, he's wonderful in the role because he's very believable. And it's, like I said, it's a perfect pairing. The way it's written, it works great for Kurt Russell. Yet another reason why The Thing is a classic. It's not just, the best special effects out there. It's great story, and it's great characters. And it's so drastically different from the original story that it's remade from, that it still feels extremely original, and it summarizes kind of Carpenter's style in many ways. So that's it for this episode of The Horror Academic. I hope you've already seen The Thing. I hope that if you haven't seen it in a very long time, that you're going to take the time and rewatch it now. Like I said, I highly recommend this Shout Factory, Scream Factory Blu-ray. I hope everybody has that in their collections at home. And, we'll definitely be talking about more Carpenter. I happen to know we're going to be talking about more Carpenter pretty soon. But, like I said, I wanted to get the ball rolling with my favorite of his films, or at least the most important of his films, I feel. So I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I will see you next time with another movie that I feel you should have on your shelves. Thanks.